You guys ask some questions or make any comments, and then we can wrap it up. Yes, sir.
What was the thing of the basis? My son is a computer science student, and he disagrees with everything I say, but I'd like to tell him what that is.
Okay. So his question was about the different base systems. All right, I'm going to give you a really brief but hopefully thorough explanation of that.
Where can he go to look at it?
Nowhere, because yeah, that is one of the few topics that solely resides in here. There's a couple guys in the project who are familiar with it, but nobody has the system down. What I was able to do is actually to crack how any valid base system could be generated. The short answer is it's all based on prime squaring, and there's a lot of details in the mathematics and why exponents and squares are so important in physics and math in general. But any prime square can fold out into a coordinate system. Its dimensions will be based on the prime. So base 10 is inherent to reality. It's called modular 9 because it's based on 3 squared. And so that creates the only system where all the functions can be unified in a single geometry. Once you go into higher base systems, you have to have multiple geometries. So I claim that they're not perfect because they involve omission. But that would be a philosophical point.
But 9 was based on 9, it is perfect.
Based on 9, it's perfect and it unifies. The other systems will do all the same properties. The only thing is they don't unify completely. But that's a little detail to get too far into. But it's really significant for, number theory in academia. This just blows everything that we know out of the water about number theory and how it works. But more importantly, when you get into coding and encryption, and hopefully John and I are going to do some work in that, because it's an area that I'm really interested in, and he's already enlightening me about a lot of different directions we could take that. But yeah, obviously you can see it creates very complex matrices of very extremely simple elements in the beginning. But my contact information is available on my website. My phone number is there. I get crazy calls all the time. So I'm sure whoever.
These people here know.
Yeah. You can find it all online. And he's free to contact me through Skype as well, or by phone. Yes, ma'am.
Prime squaring can fold out into a, what did you say? Prime squaring can fold out
into a coordinate system, which could be of various dimensions. Yeah, and there's, I don't want to push that too far because I think people are going to pass out. Yes, sir.
What relation is this with Golden ratio?
Golden ratio, which is, sometimes called phi, also connected with the Fibonacci sequence. One interesting discovery that was made by a gentleman that some of you are probably familiar with, his name is Nassim Haramein. And he's done a lot of work in kind of quote-unquote alternative physics community. And he actually came from a lot of the same crew in Hawaii where when a lot of this was started. And Nassim, what he figured out is that the phi spiral is generated by what's called the phi rectangle. If you're familiar with that. So basically when they do that spiral that goes round and round, you're doing it off rectangles that you build, and you're drawing the spiral along the outside edge. So the further you generate the rectangles, the further and further the spiral goes. Well, what Nassim figured out is that at certain iterations of that, you can close it into a circle, and it'll contain still that spiral within it. What was so fascinating, this was done at a suggestion of a friend of ours named Andre. Andre suggested that, he look at Marco's equation, and when he put that spiral on top of the equation, the curve went right to that point, which if you see in our, let me get back to it. It's an important point that this is not at the center of the circle. It's offset. And when you put that phi spiral in here, it curves around, and it curves, and it curves, and it curves, and it goes right towards that point. But no matter how closely you zoom in on it, it's always slightly off the point. And the significance of that can't be underestimated, because it shows that the point is actually more accurate than the phi itself. And why that's so important is because there's nothing in conventional math that would ever make anyone predict that a simple diagram like this could give you that location of the phi. And you know, it's a principle of the system that this is why black holes aren't infinitely dense. They just get really, really dense, and then they decompress, because nothing ever goes through the center of a circle. That's why pi doesn't work, why it goes on and on forever, because no straight line passes through the center of a circle. It's always curved and warped because it's a spin continuum. So it's deflected. It's just like if you, you know, throw something at a highly accelerated top, it's going to deflect it, shoot it off to the side. So it's the same thing with numbers. You know? And so that's a short answer on phi, but it does connect in and fit in with all this. Yes, sir.
You talked about some kind of antenna going on here. What's communicating with what, or you can talk more about antenna?
Yeah, well, the story with the antennas is, and this was years ago, there was a competition that was held by the military. I can't remember which branch, but they held a competition, and I forget the gentleman's name, but he worked for a company called Signature Antennas. And based on this math, he designed some antennas, and they put them in a competition against all different kinds of antennas. And his antennas were found to be by far the most sensitive. And so I don't know if the military is still using them. That was years ago. But at the time, they were the antennas that were used to protect the four corners of the United States because of their extreme sensitivity. Now, when you ask what's being transmitted and received, well, at the purest level, it's information. Right? I mean, everything, you know, Blu-ray disc player or whatever, it's all just manipulating light and sound into all the fantastic applications that we see. So, you know, it's essentially just information being transmitted, which is the essence of what numbers are. Yes, sir.
Interesting, the Beatles evidently had a hit about this from somebody in the past.
Yeah.
Number 9.
Yeah, the famous Beatles song about number 9, yeah.
I'm interested in how...
Love Potion number 9, too, that was a good one.
Oh my goodness, yes, and Adam Trombley
Yes.
and Thrive. So, the depictions of the Taurus there that they use and the experiences that a few people have with off-planet contact, and you know what I'm talking about right here. Interesting that technology was used in that environment. You seem to have a handle on using that technology here. So, just seeing if you know anything about the significance of Adam Prompt's work, and of course he had his hauled off to Kingdom Come.
Yeah, I haven't met Adam before. I know who he is, and I know several people who know him. One of whom was the guy I was referring to that was talking about how our results were impossible. I'm hesitant to comment on his work, but yeah, they're all tapping into the same principle. It's just all roads lead to Rome, and everybody's coming to the realization, even in conventional physics, they're making toroidal fusion reactors. They understand that they understand a lot of parts of this. That the missing component is geometry, and that's where I see that this math offers something unique that is not clearly defined by any other mathematics that I personally have seen. But yeah, I mean, we're all trying to do the same thing. I haven't, personally that I remember, been taking off world, at least that I remember. But I've gone there in my mind a lot, and But even with what's before us, I mean, that's what I was trying to show us, is that you see it everywhere in nature. So really, we're just trying to imitate nature's perfection and to find how to make energy effortless.
We need it now.
Yes, sir, we do, absolutely. Let me get him first because he raised a second ago, and then.
So I guess this is really interesting, and sort of one thing that it seems like is at play is sort of a habit of mind, and maybe there seems to be similarities between sort of meditating on the patterns which emerge when dealing with sequences of numbers, and sort of following them is incredibly fulfilling and exciting, and I mean it's amazing how the world does in fact sort of have these symmetries, and we can model these symmetries using numbers and patterns which sort of have numerical existence, exist sort of in a real way. But like in the realm of meditation, in Judaism, people meditate upon the tetragrammaton, the four-letter name of God, and Yod Hey Vav Hey. And in so doing, thinking about the way in which sort of the letters are, it helps them elucidate principles of Torah and Jewish life, and it reinforces their understanding of Jewish philosophy by like a useful meditative tool. And
Well, it's a perfect example because even in that you see in Torah, it comes from the same root as Torah, torso. In the Bible, Yahweh speaks from the pillar of smoke and flame. He's speaking from out of a vortex. So yeah, I mean it's a common thread, and they have 72 names of God.
My question, I guess, ultimately came to be, well then, would you suggest that sort of as a way in which people can start coming to these sort of realizations of being more aware of natural symmetry and natural recurring patterns in nature, which is complex systems theory sort of studies a whole lot of that. I mean, would it be, I think it seems like a good thing that people might have to meditate on numbers, and in the course of their sort of contemplation, I mean, I don't know if this would be sort of an educational tool that we should be using, or...
Absolutely. I mean, I encourage meditation all around. It's something that I do and that I wish I did more. And my method is using sound as an engine to drive that meditation, and it works for me. So that's what I teach. Ultimately, we get more out of being open and clear and lucid. And that's when we assimilate, and we can actually, knowledge, understanding, intellectual, it's not, everybody thinks it's about analysis, which is about breaking things down to components and then trying to somehow reassemble them into a unity, and it's very unsuccessful. We learn a lot by analysis, but it's very unsuccessful in terms of getting an actual, real knowledge about principles in the world. And the other method, which is really at the core of our everyday cognition, at all times and places, which is much less cumbersome, is called synthesis or analogy. And it's about being able to see the similarity in everything, and so to be able to draw those connections. And that's particularly where I think that meditation can come in, because it can give you a way of sort of encapsulating everything in an instant. And then the elucidation is obviously the hard part.
Front work of getting it all together.
Yeah. Let me get her real quick, and then yes, ma'am.
Did you or your teacher ever try laughter as one of mine?
I have laughed at him a lot.